They spent lifetimes rigging the game, but then you showed up and flipped the entire board. They built their empire on deception, illusion, and hidden hands pulling unseen strings. They created rules not to be followed, but to control. And for centuries they succeeded, until now. Because they never anticipated someone like you, someone who wasn't blind, wasn't obedient, wasn't asleep. Someone who could see the cracks in their system, who could hear the whispers beneath the noise, who could feel the weight of the truth pressing against every carefully placed lie. You are their worst nightmare, not because of what you do, but because of what you know. But they never wanted you to know. They designed the world so that you wouldn't question, wouldn't resist, wouldn't even think. They needed the masses distracted, divided, and docile. But you were built differently. Your mind rejects the programming, your energy disrupts the illusion, and your mere presence forces people to face what they've been running from their entire lives. That's why they fight you. That's why they fear you. That's why they watch you. Because they know the moment too many people wake up, the system collapses. Before we go deeper, do your part. Like this video, subscribe, and drop 999 in the comments. When you engage, you don't just trigger the algorithm, you trigger a shift. You send a signal, not just to YouTube, but to the universe, that the awakened are finding each other, that the ones they tried to silence are speaking louder than ever, and the more we unite, the stronger we become. Now, let's get into it. They talk about control like it's permanent, like it's inevitable, like it's something you have no power over. But what they don't understand is that control is an illusion, and the moment you see the illusion, it shatters. That's why you were never supposed to wake up. That's why they programmed the world to attack anyone who questions too much, digs too deep, or sees too clearly. They call you crazy, rebellious, a problem. Not because you're any of those things, but because they can't control you. And what they can't control, they fear. The power of being chosen isn't just in what you know, it's in what your existence does to others. You walk into a room and the energy shifts. People tense up, get defensive, stutter through their words. They don't even understand why, but something about you makes them uncomfortable, because you don't just see through the system, you see through them, through their masks, their insecurities, their carefully curated illusions, and they hate you for it. They hate that they can't lie to you, can't manipulate you, can't pull you into their game. Some will be drawn to you, inspired, awakened. Others will despise you with everything in them, because you are living proof that everything they built their identity on is a lie. And the best part? You don't even have to do anything. You don't need to fight, argue, or seek revenge. Karma moves through you. They think they're resisting you, but they're really just resisting truth. They think they're fighting you, but they're really just fighting themselves. That's why your enemies can't sleep, why they watch your every move, why they talk about you long after you've walked away. Because deep down, they know. They know they failed their test when they met you. They know they should have listened instead of fought. And they know, no matter how much they try to bury it, that they'll never escape the moment they were exposed. You weren't sent to be ordinary. You weren't sent to be liked. You were sent to be felt. And the truth is, whether they love you or fear you, whether they learn or suffer, whether they rise or fall, you were never meant to be forgotten. And by the time we're done, you'll understand exactly why. And thank you. Yes, you, the chosen one. Whether you're tuning in for the first time or have been walking this path with us from the beginning, your presence and super gifts are the very force shaking the system, exposing illusions and tipping the scales of power. They never wanted you to know who you are. They never wanted you to step fully into your purpose. But here you are, unshaken, unstoppable, and ready. If you're prepared to rise above the deception, break free from their control, and step into your true strength like never before, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop the number 77 in the comments if you're ready to turn their fear into your fuel. The test is here. The shift is happening. Let's get started. Number 1. The error in their system, and the one thing they feared most. They designed the lie so well, they forgot one thing: you were born to see through it. They never planned for you. They never accounted for the ones who could hear the whispers between the words, the ones who could feel the weight of the unseen. They thought their deception was flawless, their control absolute. But the universe has a way of placing the right minds in the wrong places, the cracks in their foundation, the errors in their perfect system. And that's exactly what you are. The glitch they can't fix, the storm they can't predict, the awakening they never wanted. They buried the truth so deep, they believed it would never resurface. But truth doesn't die, it waits. And when the time is right, it finds the ones it was meant for. That's why you see what others don't. That's why your mind rejects their programming. That's why you can walk into a room and feel the energy shift before a single word is spoken. You weren't supposed to wake up, and now that you have, they are panicking. Ever wonder why history repeats itself? Why every time someone speaks truth, they're silenced, erased, discredited? Because knowledge is the greatest threat to control. Look at every revolution, every system that's crumbled. It didn't fall because of force. It fell because enough people saw through the illusion. They never needed bars and chains to keep the masses in check. They built a prison of deception, a reality so carefully manufactured that most people never question it. And yet, here you are. Your very existence is proof that their system is failing. You're the one they can't manipulate, the one who reads between the lines, the one who doesn't swallow the official narrative. They built entire institutions, industries, and media empires just to keep people blind. And still, you see, that's why people react so strongly to you. That's why some cling to you, searching for the missing puzzle piece in their own awakening. And that's why others lash out, fight you, turn on you, because you force them to confront what they've been running from their entire lives. Truth makes the blind furious. But here's the part that scares them the most. Your awakening is contagious. It's no coincidence that chosen ones have always been isolated, attacked, or pushed to the margins. Every true disruptor in history was treated the same way. Nikola Tesla, Malcolm X, Joan of Arc, Galileo, Bruce Lee. Visionaries, warriors, thinkers who shattered illusions, and for that, they were persecuted. They weren't dangerous because of weapons or armies. They were dangerous because they knew. They were dangerous because their existence alone proved the system was a lie. And now, it's happening again. They'll try to make you doubt yourself. They'll label you as rebellious, paranoid, or too much. They'll try to convince you that you're imagining things, that the things you feel, the patterns you see, the shifts you sense, are all in your head. But you know better. You feel the shift. You see the deception unraveling piece by piece. Your presence alone disturbs those who have built their lives on lies. And here's what they'll never understand. You didn't choose this. It chose you. You didn't wake up because someone handed you the truth. You woke up because your soul rejected the lie. You didn't start seeing through the illusion because of a book, a video, or a conversation. Those things may have helped, but deep down, you already knew. The universe encoded the truth into your DNA long before you were born, And when the time was right, that knowledge activated. That's why no matter how much they try to pull you back into the illusion, it never works. Once you see, you can't unsee. This is the power of being chosen. It haunts your enemies. Because you don't have to fight them, you don't have to expose them, you don't have to seek revenge. Your existence alone is the disruption. The moment you step into a room, the moment you speak, the moment you refuse to play along, they lose control. Because they know that if one person can wake up, others can too. And that is a risk they can't afford. But here's the thing, it's already too late. You were never meant to know, yet here you are. And once the truth finds you, it spreads. One ripple turns into a tidal wave. One awakened soul becomes a beacon that ignites others. And the more they fight to suppress it, the more inevitable it becomes. They spent centuries hiding the truth. You were sent to reveal it. And now, there's nothing they can do to stop it. Number 2. Their house of lies is collapsing, and they can't stop it. They wrote history in their own words, built systems to keep you blind, and controlled knowledge like a weapon. But now, their greatest fear is happening. People like you are decoding the truth. They built everything on secrecy. The world you live in was never designed to serve you. It was designed to control you. They manipulated history, rewrote narratives, and erased entire civilizations just to make sure the truth was buried deep enough that no one would question it. And for generations, it worked. The masses were conditioned to accept their version of reality, to believe only what they were taught, to obey without question. But then something happened. You happened. You weren't supposed to ask, to analyze, to dig beyond the surface. You weren't supposed to see the patterns, the symbols, the connections that tie everything together. You weren't supposed to question why the same families hold power, why the same lies are repeated, why the same wars, crises, and distractions cycle endlessly. But you do, and that alone shatters their illusion. Everything they built relies on one thing: ignorance. Why do you think they control education so aggressively? Why do you think history is written by the victors and force-fed in schools without question? Why do you think critical thinking is suppressed, while obedience is rewarded? Because if people knew the real story, if they understood how power truly operates, the entire system would collapse overnight. You see, they don't control people with force. They control people with knowledge, by deciding who gets it and who doesn't. Look at how information is handled in this world. The truth isn't hidden. It's hidden in plain sight. They don't erase it completely. They encode it, distort it, surround it with disinformation, so that if someone stumbles upon it, they dismiss it as a lie. They mock the truth, turn it into conspiracy, call it crazy, so that no one takes it seriously. And yet, despite all their efforts, you're still here, awake, unshaken, searching. And that terrifies them, because every time someone like you figures out a piece of the puzzle, the system weakens. Every time you reject their version of reality, their illusion loses power. Every time you break free from their programming, the grip they've had for centuries starts to slip. They know this, and that's why they fight so hard to keep people asleep. Ever notice how they react when someone speaks too much truth? Ever notice how they attack anyone who goes against the official narrative? It's not random. It's a pattern, a method they've used for generations. Look at history. Galileo was silenced for proving the Earth wasn't the center of the universe. Nikola Tesla's work was suppressed because free energy would have dismantled entire industries. Malcolm X was assassinated not just because he spoke, but because people actually listened. The system doesn't fear ideas, it fears ideas that spread. And that's where you come in. They've spent centuries perfecting their methods, but what they never accounted for was the power of the awakened mind. The reason they fail against people like you is because you don't just hear information, you feel it. You don't just believe what's written, you analyze it, break it down, reconstruct it, see beyond it. And once you see how deep the deception runs, you become immune to it. They don't have control over you anymore. That's why you don't buy into their distractions. That's why their fear tactics don't work on you. That's why when they push propaganda, you can instantly see the agenda behind it. You've broken out of their cycle, and now you're watching the illusion from the outside. And here's the part they don't want you to realize. The system is crumbling faster than ever before. The cracks are everywhere. Institutions are failing. People are waking up in numbers they never expected. Their grip on power is slipping, and no matter how much they try to censor, suppress, or silence, they can't stop what's coming. Because truth is like water. It always finds a way through. This is why you were sent here. You weren't just meant to wake up. You were meant to lead others out of the darkness. You are the disruption, the anomaly, the presence that shakes people out of their programmed reality. And whether they accept it or resist it, they can't ignore it. So keep questioning, keep breaking the narrative, keep being the force they never saw coming, because their time is up, and yours is just beginning. Number 3. They built a system of obedience, but you were born to defy it. They spent centuries training minds to follow, to obey, to never question, and then you came along, effortless, unshaken, and immune to their control. That terrifies them. You were never meant to exist. Not like this. Not with eyes that pierce through deception. Not with an intuition that dismantles illusions before they can even take hold. They built a world where knowledge was supposed to belong to the elite, where power was passed through bloodlines, where truth was locked away behind secret doors. But you broke through without permission. That's what terrifies them the most. The fact that you know things you were never taught. The fact that your mind makes connections without needing their approval. The fact that your presence alone, without status, without credentials, without their so-called education, unsettles them. They built an entire system to control thought, to dictate what people can and cannot access, but somehow you stand outside of it, unmoved, uncontrolled, untamed. And that makes you dangerous. Ever wonder why certain people react to you with immediate hostility? Why they mock you, dismiss you, or try to paint you as a problem? It's not because you're wrong. It's because you threaten their sense of security. Most people build their lives around what they've been told to believe. They don't question, because questioning means tearing down everything they've built their reality upon. And when they meet someone like you, someone who operates beyond their programming, they panic. Because if you can think freely, it means they could have too. And that's the last thing they want to admit. That's why they try so hard to discredit you, to silence you, to label you as extreme or out of touch. They need you to be wrong, because if you're right, it means their entire existence has been a carefully crafted lie. History proves it. Look at any society, any empire, any period in time where control was the priority. The greatest threat was never armies, never revolutions, never force. It was always knowledge. It was always the ones who thought beyond what was allowed, the ones who refused to accept the world as it was presented to them. They feared Socrates because he questioned too deeply. They feared Copernicus and Galileo because they saw beyond what was accepted as truth. They feared Frederick Douglass because he educated himself when they said he shouldn't. They feared Bruce Lee because he refused to be confined by one system, one way of thinking. Every chosen one in history was met with resistance, not because they were wrong, but because they were right before the world was ready to accept it. And now it's happening again. Every time you walk into a room, you bring an energy they can't define. They can't categorize you, can't box you in, can't predict what you'll say or how you'll react. That alone is enough to send people into defense mode. Ever noticed how people either gravitate toward you or immediately reject you? There is no in-between. That's not random, that's the mark of the chosen. Because when someone has built their life on illusion, truth feels like an attack. They'll call you arrogant for thinking differently. They'll call you difficult for questioning things. They'll say you're too much, when in reality, they just weren't prepared to meet someone like you. Because most people need permission to think. They need authority to validate their knowledge. But you move through this world like a force of nature, absorbing information, recognizing patterns, without waiting for approval. And that is their greatest fear. Because if one person can think freely, it means others can too. And if enough people break free, the system collapses. That's why they double down when you question them. That's why they get aggressive when you don't follow blindly. Because your very existence is proof that the power they hold over others is fragile. They need people to obey. They need people to comply. They need people to stay within the lines. And you were never built to fit inside their lines. And here's what they'll never admit. Their fear of you is really just their fear of themselves. Because deep down, they know they had the same opportunity to break free. They know they could have asked the same questions, could have unlearned the lies, could have chosen a different path. But they didn't. And rather than face that regret, they project their fear onto you. But here's the difference between you and them. You don't run from truth. You don't shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You don't play small just to avoid making waves. You see, they don't fear you because you're against them. They fear you because you don't need them. And that's something no system of control, no institution, no force in the world can ever stop. So let them watch. Let them react. Let them try to figure you out. Because at the end of the day, you were never meant to follow. You were meant to lead. Number 4. The more you speak, the more their lies crumble. They controlled the world with deception until you came along and spoke the truth. And now, every word you say is another crack in their empire. They built their world like a house of mirrors, reflecting only what they wanted people to see. They gave you history books filled with half-truths, leaders hand-picked to play their roles, and a reality so carefully constructed that most people never even questioned it. But illusions are fragile. They only survive when no one dares to look too closely. And that's why they fear you. Because you see, the more you speak, the more their illusion unravels. Every time you challenge their narratives, question their authority, or simply refuse to comply, their grip weakens. They spent lifetimes perfecting their methods of control, manipulating minds through education, religion, media, and entertainment. They created a system where people police themselves, where questioning is discouraged, and where blind obedience is rewarded. But you were never built to be controlled, and that makes you the biggest threat to everything they've built. That's why they react so violently to truth. That's why they rush to silence anyone who speaks outside the script. They gaslight, calling you crazy or delusional. They discredit, labeling you a conspiracy theorist, a problem, a danger. They censor, ensuring that only the voices that serve them get amplified. But no matter how much they fight it, the truth keeps leaking through. Ever noticed how desperate they are to control the conversation? How the moment someone steps outside their lines, they're met with attacks, bans, and character assassinations. That's not the behavior of those in control. That's the behavior of those who are losing control. If their system was as strong as they wanted you to believe, they wouldn't need to work so hard to maintain it. But here's the thing about illusions. They only work when everyone plays along, and people are waking up. More and more every day. The lies they spent centuries crafting no longer hold the same weight. They're unraveling faster than they can cover them up. And that is the nightmare they never prepared for. They thought they had time. They thought they could keep the veil over people's eyes forever. They thought distractions, scandals, and fear-mongering would always be enough to maintain control. But what they never considered was that the truths would become contagious. And you are one of the carriers. When you speak, you plant seeds. Some won't be ready to hear it, but others will. And once someone hears truth, real truth, they can never unhear it. It lingers in their mind. It challenges them in moments of silence. It forces them to confront the cracks they've ignored. And eventually, it spreads. Look at history. Every revolution began with an idea. Every system that fell not because of war or politics, but because people stopped believing in it. The greatest collapses of power didn't happen overnight. They happened when people simply refused to comply, when they stopped playing the game. And that's what's happening now. Every time you call out their deception, every time you refuse to accept their lies, every time you wake someone up, you accelerate the inevitable. Their system wasn't designed to withstand truth. It was designed to withstand ignorance. And that's why they're desperate, because the ignorance they relied on is disappearing faster than they can replace it. They're out of moves. Their censorship isn't working. Their propaganda is backfiring. Their fear tactics are losing their effect. They wanted to keep you afraid, keep you doubtful, keep you questioning yourself. But you don't doubt anymore. You know. And the moment you know, you become impossible to control. This is why they fear you. Not because you have an army, not because you hold official power, but because you refuse to believe in their illusion anymore. And once the illusion dies, their power dies with it. So let them try to silence you. Let them mock. Let them discredit. Let them label you however they want. It doesn't matter, because the truth doesn't need validation. The truth doesn't need permission. And the truth, it's already winning. Number 5. They can track everything except how you know. They monitor your data, they record your words, they map your habits, but the one thing they can't trace is the way truth flows through you, and that terrifies them. They built a world where knowledge is owned, where every piece of information is controlled, filtered, distorted. Universities, institutions, think tanks, all designed not to educate, but to contain, to keep real wisdom locked away, rationed out only to those they deem worthy. They wanted to be the gatekeepers of truth, deciding who gets access and who stays in the dark. But then you came along, and somehow you just know. You don't have the degrees they respect. You didn't need to be initiated into their secret societies. You weren't trained in their institutions, and yet you understand things people spend lifetimes trying to uncover. That is what sends them into a quiet panic, because no matter how much they try to control information, they cannot control the source of your wisdom. They track everything: what you read, what you watch, what you type, what you search for. But there's one thing they can't track: the moment an awakened mind receives truth without needing to be told. Ever notice how inspiration strikes you in ways you can't explain? How thoughts, ideas, and insights appear in your mind out of nowhere? It's not random. It's a direct connection to something beyond this controlled reality. Some call it intuition. Some call it divine guidance. Some call it ancestral memory. But no matter what name you give it, one thing is certain: it exists outside of their system, and that alone makes it a threat. True wisdom isn't learned, it's remembered. That's why you can look at a situation and instantly see through the deception without needing external proof. That's why you recognize patterns long before the rest of the world catches up. That's why you understand things instinctively, even when you can't explain how. Because what you're tapping into isn't from a book, a documentary, or an article. It's from somewhere deeper, somewhere untouchable, somewhere they will never be able to reach. And that's what makes you dangerous. Look at history. Every civilization had its seers, its sages, its mystics, people who simply knew things they were never taught. Societies tried to control them, to discredit them, to burn their knowledge and erase their existence. But it never worked, because true wisdom doesn't die. It transfers. It moves through time, through bloodlines, through consciousness itself, waiting for the right minds to awaken. And when that happens, no power structure can stop it. This is why they fear you, because you can't be silenced like a book. You can't be censored like a website. You can't be erased like a document. Your knowledge doesn't come from their system, which means they have no way to contain it. And so they resort to their last defense. They try to make you doubt yourself. Ever notice how the moment you express your insights, people rush to dismiss them? They call it speculation, coincidence, paranoia. They say, "Where's the proof? How do you know? What's your source?" As if wisdom needs a reference. As if truth needs validation from a system built on lies. They need your knowledge to be traceable, because if they can map it, they can control it. But the fact that you just know, that shakes their foundation. Because knowledge they can own, but wisdom is free. And the worst part for them? It spreads. The more you trust what you know, the more others begin to feel it too. Your certainty triggers something in those who are still asleep. It plants a seed. Even if they resist, even if they argue, they cannot unhear what you've spoken. That's why they call you dangerous. That's why they try to keep people like you isolated. Because one free mind leads to another. And if enough people tap into this untraceable connection, their entire system of control becomes obsolete. This is why the awakened don't search for truth the way others do, because we don't need to find it. It finds us. That's what they will never understand. They think power is in books, in laws, in documents stored in underground vaults. But real power is in the mind that cannot be contained. So let them wonder. Let them question how you know, where you get your insights, why you see what they can't. Because the answer is simple. You were never meant to learn from them. You were meant to remember. Number 6. They controlled the narrative until the truth started moving faster than their lies. They spent centuries writing the script, deciding who speaks, who listens, and who never gets heard. But now, the stage is collapsing, and they have no idea how to stop it. For as long as they've held power, they've controlled one thing above all else: the story. It was never about brute force. It was never about weapons or armies. It was about information. Who gets to speak? Who gets to be remembered? What version of history is taught? What truths are erased before they ever reach the surface? They controlled the press, the schools, the airwaves, the conversation itself. They built a firewall so strong, they believed no one could ever break through. And for generations, it worked. People believed what they were told. They trusted the voices in authority. They accepted history as it was given to them. They followed the script, never realizing it was written to keep them blind. But the one thing they never accounted for, the collapse of control, the moment when information would move faster than they could suppress it. That moment is now. Look around. Every system they built is cracking under its own weight. Governments are losing their grip. Media empires are scrambling to keep people distracted. The very institutions they once relied on to control the masses, education, news, entertainment, finance, are now failing them. Because for the first time in history, they no longer own the conversation. Think about it. Decades ago, they could control what people knew simply by keeping information out of reach. Erase it from textbooks, ban it from television, suppress it in universities, and it was gone. But today, a single person with a phone can expose what used to take years to uncover. Today, truth spreads in real time, unfiltered, unstoppable, faster than they can erase it. And that terrifies them. Ever notice how aggressive they've become with censorship? How desperate they are to silence voices that go against their script? It's not because those voices are wrong, it's because those voices are winning. Every time they try to discredit the truth, more people start asking questions. Every time they label something as misinformation, it only makes people more curious. Their tactics don't work anymore because the very tools they built to manipulate now work against them. Social media was meant to be their greatest weapon, an advanced system of distraction, a way to keep people engaged in nonsense while they pulled the real strings behind the curtain. But now, the platforms they designed are turning against them. The algorithms they created to shape public opinion are now accelerating their own downfall. Because the truth is no longer being broadcast from their towers, it's rising up from the people. And here's what they don't want to admit. They can't stop it. They can try to slow it down. They can shadow ban, suppress, manipulate search results, flood timelines with nonsense. But no matter what they do, the truth keeps finding a way through. Because when something is real, when something is undeniable, it doesn't need validation from their system. It spreads because it resonates. It spreads because it can't be unseen once it's been seen. That's why they fear you. That's why they fear people like you. Because you are part of the reason their control is slipping. Every time you question their version of reality, every time you share something that makes someone think, every time you refuse to blindly accept their narrative, you accelerate their collapse. And they know it. That's why they push harder. That's why they manufacture crisis after crisis, keep people distracted with division, keep the fear running at full speed. Because their only hope is to keep people so overwhelmed, so exhausted, that they stop paying attention. But it's not working. In fact, it's having the opposite effect. People are waking up in numbers they never expected. People are seeing through the game faster than they can rewrite the rules. People are unplugging from their system, rejecting their control, turning away from their distractions. And the ones who don't? The ones who still believe, even they are starting to feel it. A shift they can't explain, a sense that something is off, a knowing that reality isn't what they thought it was. This is the beginning of the end for them. They built a system to last forever. They thought their stronghold was impenetrable. They thought that as long as they controlled the flow of information, they could control the world. But now, the very foundation they built is turning to dust beneath them. Because there's one thing more powerful than censorship, one thing more dangerous than propaganda, one thing that no system, no government, no ruling elite has ever been able to stop: an awakened mind. And now, there are more of us than ever before. So let them panic. Let them fight to hold on. Let them do everything in their power to tighten their grip. Because the harder they try, the faster they fall. Their control is collapsing, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. Number 7. They feel your presence before you even speak, and that terrifies them. You don't have to say a word. You don't have to argue, convince, or fight. Your existence alone is a disruption, a shift in the energy, a crack in their illusion, a force they can't control. That's why they fear you before they even know your name. There's something about you they can't explain. The way the air feels different when you walk into a room, the way conversations shift, the way some people suddenly become defensive, the way others seem drawn to you like a magnet. It's not something you do, it's something you are. You don't conform to their expectations, you don't play by their unwritten rules, and most importantly, you don't need their approval to exist. That alone is enough to make people uneasy. Because in a world built on illusion, someone who moves with pure awareness is dangerous. Someone who doesn't seek permission is unpredictable. And someone who sees through the game but refuses to play along, that's a problem they don't know how to solve. Ever notice how some people immediately take issue with you, even when you've done nothing? How they feel threatened without a single confrontation? That's because your energy forces an internal reaction. It exposes something they've buried. It challenges the narrative they've built around themselves. And whether they realize it or not, you make them question everything they thought they knew. That's the power of presence. It's the reason certain people feel uneasy when you're near. It's the reason manipulators suddenly stumble over their own lies. The reason people who wear masks feel uncomfortable around you. The reason the insecure either admire you or despise you. It's not because you're attacking them, it's because they feel exposed. Your energy is a mirror, and most people are terrified of their own reflection. Look at history. The ones who shifted the world didn't have to raise their voice or force their way in. They simply existed as a challenge to the lie. Mahatma Gandhi stood in silence, and entire empires trembled. Bruce Lee entered a room, and even those who hated him felt his presence before he spoke. The strongest forces never have to announce themselves. They don't seek validation. They simply are. And that is what makes you powerful. You don't need to fight their system. You being here is already breaking it. You don't need to convince people to wake up. Your very existence makes them feel the shift. Some will embrace it. Some will resist it with everything in them. But none of them will be able to ignore it. Ever wondered why your silence speaks louder than their words? Why people get frustrated when you don't react the way they expect? Because they want you to explain yourself. They want you to lower yourself, to defend your presence, to play their game so they can regain control. But you don't give them that satisfaction. You move in alignment without seeking permission. You observe, but you are not deceived. You exist outside their system, and yet your presence alone is enough to fracture it. And here's the real reason they fear you. You don't need to be understood. Most people spend their entire lives begging for validation, bending their identity to be accepted, shaping themselves to fit into someone else's vision. But you stand alone, unshaken, whole. That's a power they will never comprehend. Because if you don't need approval, You can't be controlled. And that's why they react. Some will try to pull you into arguments, hoping to break your composure. Others will test you, provoke you, try to find your weakness, because the idea that someone like you exists unsettles them. If you don't doubt yourself, if you don't crave their validation, then their entire structure of control is useless against you. And here's the best part. You don't even have to do anything. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to debate them. You don't have to prove a thing, because the moment they meet you, they've already lost control. They've already felt the shift. So let them watch. Let them wonder. Let them try to understand why you unsettle them so much. Because no matter how much they resist, deep down, they know the truth. Your presence alone is enough to change everything. Number 8. They can't stop the inevitable, so now they're desperate. A system that is truly strong doesn't beg, bribe, or threaten. It doesn't silence opposition. It doesn't manipulate, and it doesn't fear exposure. Only a crumbling empire fights this hard to keep people blind. They never expected this. They never thought people like you, people who could see through the deception, people who could stand unmoved in the face of manipulation, would emerge in numbers too great to suppress. And now they're panicking. Their grip on the world is slipping, and their desperation is showing. You've seen it happening. The fear-mongering in the news, the censorship of voices that question too much, the sudden attacks on anyone who dares to speak a truth they don't approve of. These are not the actions of a system in control. These are the death throes of a system that knows its time is up. When deception no longer works, they switch to force. First, they tried to keep you obedient with distractions. They gave the masses entertainment, conflict, and material temptations, hoping you'd be too busy chasing illusions to ever notice the chains around you. But you didn't fall for it. You saw beyond the glitter, beyond the fake promises, beyond the carefully constructed dreams designed to keep people chasing, but never arriving. So they changed their approach. They tried to buy you. They made offers, dangled rewards, told you that if you just followed their path, if you just obeyed like everyone else, you'd be successful, accepted, protected. They told you that resistance would only bring suffering, that it was better to play along, better to compromise, better to let them dictate what truth should look like. But they underestimated you. You were never the type to sell your soul for comfort. They don't understand people like you, people who can't be bought, who can't be tricked, who can't be manipulated by shiny distractions. They only know how to control those who crave validation, approval, or security. But you walk in truth, and truth doesn't negotiate. So when the bribes failed, they turned to something else. They tried to isolate you. Ever noticed how the moment you started questioning, people around you started treating you differently? Friends faded away. Family distanced themselves. They painted you as the one who changed, when in reality, you just stopped playing along. This is a tactic as old as power itself. They isolate the awakened so they feel alone, so they doubt themselves, so they start questioning their own intuition. They don't need to imprison your body if they can imprison your mind. If they can make you feel like an outcast, like an anomaly, then maybe, just maybe, you'll break and return to the herd. But here's what they never saw coming. Chosen ones don't break. You don't fear solitude. You don't need approval. You don't seek permission to see what you see. You were built for this. So when isolation didn't weaken you, they had one last strategy left. They tried to scare you. Fear is their greatest weapon. They use fear to control entire populations. Fear of losing your job, fear of being rejected, Fear of being labeled crazy, radical, dangerous. Fear of being punished for standing against the machine. They push narratives designed to make you feel helpless, to make you think that resistance is futile, that the system is too powerful to fight. They want you to believe that no matter what you do, they win. But here's what they don't understand. Fear only works on those who don't know their own power. And you've already seen beyond it. You've already felt the shift. You've already realized that their power is an illusion, a house of cards that only stands because people still believe in it. But belief is crumbling. Their fear tactics are failing. People aren't scared like they used to be. That's why they're losing. You can't control people who have nothing to fear. You can't silence a movement that doesn't need approval. You can't threaten those who have already chosen truth over comfort. You can't defeat those who have already won, because they never needed your system in the first place. And that's the final nail in their coffin. The moment people stop fearing them, it's over. They can bribe, they can isolate, they can threaten, but none of it matters when the world stops believing in their authority. The system doesn't collapse because someone fights it. The system collapses when enough people stop obeying it. And that's why they're desperate. That's why they're throwing every last tactic they have at you. Because the moment they can't control you, they've already lost. And they know it. Number 9. This was never just a system. It was always a spiritual war. They thought this was about money. They thought this was about power. But what they never realized is that this has always been a war between light and darkness, a battle between deception and truth. And you were sent to tip the scales. You didn't stumble upon this knowledge by accident. You didn't just wake up one day out of curiosity. You were called. You were chosen. From the moment you opened your eyes to the illusion, your path was set. Because this isn't just about corrupt governments, rigged systems, or elite bloodlines keeping control. This goes beyond politics, beyond wealth, beyond what you can see with your physical eyes. This is a spiritual war. They control through secrecy. They operate in the shadows, manipulating reality so that people willingly enslave themselves. They make deception the norm, feed distractions to keep minds dull, push fear so that souls stay weak. They don't just want compliance, they want obedience at a level so deep that people defend their own oppression without even realizing it. And for centuries, it worked. But something changed. A shift has been happening, an awakening that was never meant to occur. People are beginning to see through the illusion, sensing that something isn't right. But more importantly, they are feeling it. And the ones who are meant to lead this shift? The ones who break the cycle? Who bring light to the hidden corners of this world? That's you. You are not just someone who questions reality. You are not just someone who sees through manipulation. You are a direct threat to the entire foundation of their deception, because your presence alone weakens their grip on the world. Think about it. Why do people react to you so strongly? Why do some admire you instantly, while others seem to despise you for no reason at all? Why do they try so hard to discredit you, to mock you, to make you feel like you don't belong? Because you carry something they cannot fake. Divine alignment. They rely on secrecy. You move with truth. They thrive in confusion. You bring clarity. They manipulate reality. You are reality. This war isn't fought with weapons, elections, or protests. This is a war of frequency, a war of energy. That's why you shift the atmosphere when you walk into a room. That's why you attract both allies and enemies without saying a word. Your very existence disrupts the balance they've worked so hard to maintain. And they hate you for it. Because while they spend their lives hiding, calculating, controlling, you just are. You don't need rituals, symbols, or secret societies to access power. You were born connected, and that's something they can never take away, no matter how hard they try. This is why chosen ones go through more suffering, more trials, more betrayals, because war is always heaviest on the front lines. Ever wondered why your life has been filled with obstacles? Why you've been tested more than most? Because only the strongest warriors are placed on the battlefield. You weren't given an easy path because you weren't sent for an easy mission. Your struggles didn't break you, they refined you. Every attack, every betrayal, every loss was designed to make you unshakable. And now you are. That's why they fear you. That's why they try to keep you distracted, disconnected, unsure of yourself. Because the moment you step fully into your power, the war is over. They don't need to defeat you. They just need to make you doubt yourself. They want you to think you're crazy, that you're imagining things, that you're just reading too much into it. But deep down, you already know. You've always known. That feeling in your chest, that sense of something bigger happening, that pull towards something greater. That's not paranoia. That's your mission calling. And the deeper truth, they've already lost. Because deception can only last as long as people believe it. Darkness can only exist as long as no one shines a light on it. And now, the light is here. You don't need an army. You don't need validation. You don't even need to fight. All you need to do is continue to exist in your truth, because that alone is enough to bring their world crashing down. Number 10. The shift they feared is now unstoppable. They built their empire on lies, believing deception would last forever. But no illusion can outrun truth, especially when the chosen ones awaken. For centuries they controlled the world with a simple formula: keep the masses asleep, keep the truth hidden, keep the awakened isolated. It worked for generations. Every time someone questioned too much, they were silenced. Every time a movement started to rise, it was crushed before it could gain momentum. They believed they had perfected the cycle. But now, the cycle is breaking. The illusion is unraveling in real time. More chosen ones are awakening than ever before. People are seeing the cracks in the system, questioning the narratives, rejecting the programming. What was once dismissed as crazy is now undeniable. What was once hidden in shadows is now coming to light. The very control they depended on is slipping through their fingers, and they have no way to stop it. This was their biggest fear. Not rebellion, not war, awakening. Because once people see the truth, they never go back. Once people feel what it's like to be free, they refuse to be controlled. And now, it's too late to put the blindfolds back on. That's why their desperation is growing. That's why their distractions are more intense, their censorship more aggressive, their fear tactics more extreme. They are scrambling to keep people in the dark because they know if the illusion falls, so does their power. But here's the truth they refuse to accept. The shift is no longer a possibility. It's a reality. No matter what they do, they cannot stop what has already begun. The chosen ones are here. The awakening is happening, and their time, the era of deception, control, and manipulation, has come to an end. They spent centuries trying to prevent this moment, but destiny cannot be rewritten. The truth is rising, and the chosen ones, we were sent to bring it forward.